We start today with remarkable news of President Joe Biden doing something that Donald Trump promised to do, MAGATs said would be great to do, and the entire right wing has insisted only a Republican would be able to do such a thing. What am I talking about? I'm talking about decreasing our supply chain dependence on China and replacing it with other parts of the world and other countries. And specifically, we're talking about Mexico. Take a look at this headline. For the first time in 2 decades, the U.S. buys more from Mexico than from China. These are figures released yesterday by the U.S. Commerce Department, and they show that when you look at the value of goods imported from China compared to that imported from Mexico in 2023, the Mexican imports went up 5%, more than 475 billion. At the same time, Chinese imports declined to 20% to 427 billion. And we now have, for the first time in decades, imported more from Mexico than from China. Now, I am not going to pretend that just because Biden did something Trump said would be good to do, that it's actually a good thing to do. We're going to get later in the segment to, is this actually a good thing? But to the extent that the party line for the right has been, we've got to decrease our dependence on China. We're importing too much relative to what we export from China. That's called the trade balance. It's risky when it comes to pharmaceuticals, when it comes to steel, when it comes to cheap tchotchkes that you buy at any Caribbean destination that look exactly the same, except for it says St. John or St. Thomas or Aruba. You know the tchotchkes I'm talking about. Anyway, the idea is we should import less of that stuff. There's a broader trend here, okay? And the broader trend is that increasingly, this is now speaking industrially, Mexico is a viable alternative to China. It's closer. It has surpassed China as our top source of official imports. It's believed by some, and I'm trying to be precise but also careful with my language, it's believed by some that there is less of a national security concern when it comes to imports from Mexico, while at the same time, people coming from Mexico are rapists and criminals, but we're better off getting stuff from Mexico than from China, according to these very same people. So it's a change that just underscores the dynamics of the changing U.S.-China relationship, how deal flows are evolving and changing. We've got a strong dollar, a global economy that's okay. U.S. exports slightly up in 2023, imports down overall, but comparatively, imports way up from Mexico relative to China. And so this is an accomplishment for Joe Biden that Trump and MAGA promised but failed to do. We've reduced our dependence on China. And the way that Joe Biden has done it, I think it's not enough to just say it happened while Joe Biden was president. We should be able to say, well, what are the policies that helped it happen? The Biden administration has promoted what's called nearshoring to Mexico. That's what I mean by getting our stuff from a place that's geographically closer. We've seen this with companies like Hisun or Hisun moving production to Mexico and keeping supply chains in North America. The climate legislation of 2022 incentivized companies to move manufacturing out of China by offering tax credits for certain products, electric vehicles and others, if you don't source parts from China. That encouraged getting stuff from Mexico rather than China. The Biden administration has invested in domestic manufacturing. So those policies have encouraged building or expanding in either the U.S. or with U.S. allies like Mexico. Geopolitical dynamics have certainly helped push this along as well. So we can't deny that there is tension in that part of the world. China's alignment with Russia as Russia has invaded Ukraine has further pushed companies to reduce dependence on China. And then encouraging foreign direct investments in alternatives has directly led to a surge in foreign direct investment in Mexico, up 21%. And that's something that the Biden administration has done to make Mexico more attractive than China. So Biden did the thing MAGAs wanted. Great. Now, is it a good thing? Well, there's debate over that. One of the things that I've explained many times is that publicly, it's very popular to say, reduce dependence on China, bring supply chains home, etc. That's all great in a sense, but we as a country for 40 years or longer, at least 40 years, have implicitly decided we would rather take the geopolitical risk of importing from China in exchange for the cheap stuff. Because it's a reality that if you start manufacturing the things we get from China in the US, they will be way more expensive. And then people will complain about inflation. They'll, I guess, be happy about the supply chain being brought home, but then they'll say, hey, everything's more expensive. Mexico could be an intermediate there, which is things may go up in price a little, but we're reducing dependence on China. And things won't be as expensive as if we were to manufacture everything in the United States. So that's a political choice. But it can't be denied that Biden did the thing Trump said he would do and that it was a good thing to do, but he wasn't able to do. Will the MAGATs give Biden the credit? Will they acknowledge that this is what they wanted done? Probably not, but it's important to report it nonetheless.